A couple of people have asked me about the devil in relation to witchcraft, and I've actually written about that in my book, The Night Journey, Witchcraft as Transformation, and how the figure of the devil relates to resistance to oppression in witchcraft. So I'll start. The witch is the ultimate figure of resistance to power. When the powerless have no more material means to hand of resisting the powerful, then they resort to witchcraft. The witch in history is frequently marginalised and associated with wild sexuality, queerness, perversion, resistance to authority, undermining the patriarchy, smash the patriarchy, and generally causing trouble to rulers and oppressors. That's why the English authorities in northern France labelled Joan of Arc a witch. She was a gender divergent and woman-loving woman. Clear signs of witchcraft, according to all the folklore. If we let go of this symbolism of queerness and resistance, we lose something quintessential of the power in the archetype of the witch. So, with that in mind, in that context, another very significant figure in the history of witchcraft as resistance to the authority of the church is the devil. And when I say the authority of the church, I'm talking about the hegemony of Christianity and the church and its ability to persecute deviants of all kinds throughout the centuries. So, the devil and witchcraft. Some folkloric craft practitioners have always honoured both Lucifer and Jesus, regarding them as brothers, from the reference in the book of Job about Samael being among the sons of God. Cain is also an important figure in their mysteries and is viewed as the son of Samael and Lilith. And Tubal-Cain is viewed, who is a different guy, is viewed as the earthly vessel of Azazel. These traditions place a lot of importance on the smith gods such as Prometheus, Tubal-Cain, Hephaestus, Wayland and Vulcan. So it might be remembered that Prometheus rebelled against the gods and gave fire to humanity and was very severely punished for doing that. So I can understand why some Wiccans completely denied that they even believed in the devil, as I can vividly remember the fear instilled in us by the Satanic Panic of the late 1980s. I realised I was a pagan in 1985 and I got initiated into Wicca in 1991, so I was very aware of the Satanic Panic in the UK and how that was impacting the Wiccan community. So it's much easier to say we don't believe in your mythology at all than it is to say something more complicated, such as we don't accept your dualistic cosmology, but we do believe there is a place for acknowledging the darker aspects of the psyche and the deities associated with them, and rather than demonising them, it would be better to integrate those forces into consciousness and work with their energies. Obviously that's a very Jungian view, and it would be difficult for someone who literally believes in the devil to take that on board. So it's just easier to say, look, we just don't believe in your stuff, just nope. However, some pagan and Wiccan writers actually did attempt to convey the more complex and nuanced view that I just outlined. Various concepts and images of these entities are lurking about in the basement of the Western psyche, or the collective unconscious. However, we are not powerless to change them. Some people will prefer to ignore them altogether. Others feel the need to change these images by working with them. However, there is no need to throw Satanists under the bus when stating that Wiccans do not worship the devil. There are at least 3 different flavours of Satanism. The first being the philosophical and anarchist variety, allegedly espoused by Mikhail Bakunin. And then there's the inversion of Christianity variety, and the people who are worshipping the Egyptian god Set. So all of these are completely different flavours of Satanism. So people should know which one they mean when they're talking about it. And if you go around claiming that Satanism is just an inversion of Christianity, that's a very inadequate explanation of what Satanism is. And, you should also look at the philosophical Satanists in the United States who are arguing for freedom of religion and freedom from religion and the ability to have birth control and access to abortion, for example. So I haven't met that many Satanists, and many of the ones that I have met have taken considerable pleasure in being self-consciously very dark and very left-hand path. I've even met some right-wing Satanists. So there's nasty people in every group, but that doesn't mean that all of them are like that. I also know some sect worshippers and some left-wing Satanists. So, there's not that many Satanists around, to be honest, but, I occasionally bump into them. It's also worth mentioning that an acknowledgement of the possible existence of Lucifer or Samael or any other similar entity doesn't mean that we are suddenly all Satanists, right? We can say, oh yeah, that archetype exists or that being exists, but it doesn't mean that we're suddenly worshipping that entity. And it's interesting that kind of the feminine versions of the adversary are acceptable. So like Lilith is a very acceptable figure to most people, but Samael never gets a look in, right? Because that's a bit too close to the devil and mustn't go there. So yeah, Wicca and Satanism are obviously two separate and distinct traditions. But we really aren't being fair and reasonable if we demonise Satanism in the same way that some Christians have done to us. I mean, some Christians, obviously, not all of them. And I think there's a positive side to acknowledging that the horned god has a whiff of the devil about him. The Christian image of the devil was partly created from the image of Pan, the god of sexuality, wildness, and resistance to hierarchy and civilization. When traditional witches referred to the devil, these were the ideas they were trying to connect with. And the oppression of the church and its attempt to crush the joy out of life by imposing fasts and penances and punishing people for deviant sexuality seems an excellent reason for a medieval person to think, oh, there's that devil worship, can't be that bad. I mean, I think I'm going to go and check it out. It sounds good. There's orgies and, feasts. Why not? I think if I was a medieval person, I'd be like, yeah, bring it on. So, from a hard or hardish polytheist point of view, I would argue that Lucifer, Satan, Samael, Asmodeus, Beelzebub, and various other entities of that crowd are different beings. They're not all the same guy. They may have got lumped together as one by the monotheists, but then I think we would all agree that monotheists have a tin ear when it comes to mythology. One of the pagan deities whose image fed into the Christian concept of the devil was Pan, and it is thought that that is how the devil acquired his cloven hooves, unless it was from the image of Azazel as the scapegoat. Some people have argued that neither Jesus nor Satan have a place in contemporary paganisms, because we do not accept the dualistic and antagonistic worldview of Christianity. However, I don't have to accept that monotheism's assessment of the stature or nature of a being is true in order to accept that the being, or at least its archetype, exists. I assume that Jesus exists as a god form, but I certainly don't accept monotheism's view of who he is. He was just this guy, So why not his brother Lucifer? We don't accept fundamentalist Christianity's assessment that all our deities are the devil in disguise, so why should we accept their view of Lucifer? I mean, the word Lucifer means the light bringer. He's the the god of the morning star. So, not necessarily the big bad guy. So, the various deities that were some form of adversary and a necessary source of creative conflict in the pre-Christian pagan religions all got lumped together to form the Christian version of the devil as the main adversary of Yahweh. Furthermore, the Jewish concept of Samael or Satan was quite different, and it existed alongside other figures such as Lilith as necessary aspects of the cosmic order. So remember that if you've watched the Netflix series Lucifer, which was certainly contributed to by Neil Gaiman, Lucifer is the Punisher. He's the one who punishes people who are mean. So he's clearly in that version, he's clearly part of the cosmic order and a necessary figure, at least in that cosmology. So I think the Christian view was probably influenced either by the two gods of Zoroastrianism, Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu, or by the good and evil entities of Manichaism. So what was Manichaism, I hear you ask? Manichaism was essentially a Gnostic view of the world that held that matter was created by an evil demiurge and that the source of all good was the creator, to whom light and spirit seek to return by escaping from matter. So clearly not Gnosticism, clearly not pagan worldview, right? Zoroastrians, on the other hand, say that the world was created by Ahura Mazda, the good god. However, both systems have an ultimate force of good pitted against an ultimate force of evil. Contrast this with Judaism, where Samael was essentially under the control of Yahweh. In this view, Samael existed to punish transgressors, as I mentioned. If you look at the history of the Jewish mythologization of Satan, Samael, Azazel, Asmodeus, and other characters, it's clear that they are much more nuanced than the Christian versions. And that's another thing. I really wish people wouldn't conflate Judaism and Christianity or back project Christian attitudes onto Judaism, which is a completely different religion. That Christianity is actually a distortion of Judaism. And as far as I know, it's actually a heresy in Christianity to regard the devil as a being of equal power to God. It doesn't stop people doing it, but it is a heresy. So, obviously, as a polytheist, I don't accept monotheism's view that there's only one God and only one adversary. So I have room in my concept of deities for some that like to promote conflict for whatever reason they think necessary. And even if they don't happen to be among the deities with whom I have a personal relationship, because I'm not really a fan of conflict myself, if I acknowledge the existence of Lilith and Loki and Set and Yahweh and Asherah, then I'm also prepared to accept that Lucifer, Samael, Baphomet and Asmodeus also exist, even if I don't have a relationship with them. My polytheism consists of acknowledging the existence of many deities and honouring and or worshipping those that have called to me. So far, only one of these entities has come knocking at my door, but if one of the others shows up, I think I would make my own assessment of their character. After all, Christianity was very rude about all our other deities, so why should I take their word for it about any entity? As to whether the Wiccan horned god contains a bit of the devil in his DNA, I think he probably does. If the devil is equated in the Christian worldview with prancing about naked by moonlight, joyous lovemaking and wild shenanigans, well, the god of the witches also represents those things. So Pan, who may have informed some of the Christian idea of the devil, because he represents wildness and wilderness and unbridled sexuality, is one of the few beings involved that was not an adversary figure in ancient mythologies. In Charles Godfrey Leland's Aradia, the Gospel of the Witches, Aradia is presented as the consort of Lucifer, and it appears that Gerald Gardner and Doreen Valiente replaced Lucifer with Cernunnos when they were forming Wicca. in part because they believed Margaret Murray's theory that the being worshipped by witches was an ancient pagan horned god, but also because they were well aware of the media furore that would result if they admitted to devil worship. However, it appears from some research by Sabina Magliocco that the legend of Aradia predates the association of witchcraft with devil worship. It's also worth noting that the word demon, daemon in Greek, originally meant a spirit of place, or the genius of a gifted person, and had no negative connotations in ancient paganism. My personal theology celebrates the marriage of spirit and matter, and not their separation. I celebrate wildness and chaos and the celebration of physical pleasure. I don't think that blind obedience is a virtue. I think a deity that represents anarchy and rebellion against absolute authority is well worth looking into. So let's have a look at adversaries in ancient paganisms. Some ancient paganisms had the concept of a struggle between two groups of deities. In Greek mythology, the clash of the Olympian gods with their rivals, the Titans, and in Norse mythology, the clash of the Aesir and Vanir with the giants. But these were not so much conceived of as a struggle of good and evil, as a struggle between natural forces such as fire and ice, some of which were more inimical to humans than others. Obviously, cold can kill us, so very cold spaces can kill us, and fire can keep us warm. I mean, fire can also kill us, but when fire is kept under control, it can warm us up and keep us alive. And obviously, if you melt the ice, it will make water, so everything in moderation. However, things were complicated in the Greek myths because Prometheus stole fire from the gods to give to humanity, which was an impious act, but one for which we should be grateful. And in the Norse myths, the gods were born from the primal giant Ymir, and then slew him to make the heavens and the earth. Some ancient religions of the Near East had powerful beings who were slain by the creator god. For example, in Sumerian mythology, Tiamat, the serpent goddess, was slain by Marduk, who formed the earth from her body, probably the original of many dragon-slaying stories. We can trace some of the motifs that went into the making of the archetype of the devil back to some of these figures. And indeed, medieval dragon-slaying stories, such as the story of St. Margaret, specifically equate the dragon that's being slain with a manifestation of the devil. So, you can see the continuity of these stories. So, I think that we need to be careful around these archetypes. For myself, the name Satan makes me really uncomfortable. I'm much more comfortable with Old Nick, Lucifer, or even the devil. But then I'm curious to delve into the depths and find out exactly why these names make me uncomfortable. Given the enormous weight of negativity attached to the archetype of the devil, anyone invoking these entities needs to be really careful to invoke the aspects of the complex that they want. The freedom, anarchy, hedonism and sex-positive aspects, and avoid the negative associations such as selfishness, greed and destructive impulses. I find it very interesting that most people work with lesser-known names and beings, such as Samael and Lucifer, arguably the bright side of the archetype, and avoid the more negative aspects. And indeed, so much negativity has been loaded onto this archetype that it may be difficult to recover the bright aspects of it. If you do invoke or evoke such a being, are you a powerful enough magician to handle it? So I think that all of this is about civilization and its discontents. It's easy to see how gods of the wildwood, symbols of the wilderness and therefore opposed to civilization, with which Christianity strongly identifies itself. I mean, note that I think they've had 14 popes called urban. Like, hey, we're urban, not pagan. The Christians are going, we're pagan, woo. Anyway, so these gods of the wildwood may have fed into the Christian archetype of the devil. If you read Lolly Willows or The Loving Huntsman by Sylvia Townsend Warner, written in 1926, in that book the god of the witches is unequivocally represented with considerable glee as Satan. He's quite kindly, and the freedom of the countryside where he holds sway is contrasted with the stifling atmosphere of middle-class respectability from which the heroine escapes. I mean, personally, if you're going to read this book, read the Lolly Willows, I'd skip like the first half and just go to the second half where she actually breaks out and has fun, because I nearly gave up halfway through. Anyway, many myths and legends from ancient times until very recently are about the struggle to establish civilization and order, set against the urge to return to a state of nature and chaos. The myth of the dragon slayer is one such story. One of the oldest of these myths is the slaying of the dragon Tiamat by the hero god Marduk. Tiamat is the embodiment of the primordial waters, the great ocean. She represents the salt waters, and her consort Apsu is the sweet waters. When Marduk slays her, he builds the mountains from her bones and the waters of the earth from her blood. This represents the establishment of order. In many Christianized dragon legends, the dragon represents the devil. In pagan mythology, the dragon represents earth energy. In Chinese mythology, dragons are spirits that guard sources of water. It has not been universally agreed that the imposition of law and order and civilization is necessarily all good. If someone were to draw a mind map or a family tree describing all these entities and their mythological relationship with each other, it would get quite complicated. Hey, remember that show Rock Family Trees, where they like traced all the different bands through the family tree? It was great. Anyway, the massive number of references to the devil in popular culture add an extra layer of complexity. So, when you say that you don't worship the devil, you might need to be a bit more specific. Do you mean Old Nick, Satan, Asmodeus, Azazel, Beelzebub, Baphomet, Samael, Lilith, Tiamat, Lucifer, Mephistopheles, Angra Iblis, Loki, Set, Apep, Prometheus, or some other adversary figure? The devil really is in the details. So, if you enjoyed this video, check out The Night Journey, Witchcraft as Transformation, available from the Doreen Valiente online shop, and Doreen Valiente Foundation online shop, sorry. And also check out my other book, Dark Mirror, The Inner Work of Witchcraft, also available from the Doreen Valiente Foundation online shop. Hope you enjoyed this. Take care now, and see you next time.